picked me to be in a school play, and I had a major role. I think she thought I needed the confidence because teachers are like that. And I got up and did the play, and I was so quiet that nobody in the audience could hear me. So for about 25% of the play, when I was the main part, nobody could hear anything. But they were very patient. There was a lot of parents in the room, so I think they were very patient for me. In high school, when I'd have to stand up in front of my peers, I would start to get so nervous that I would start to cry. So, and now I'm standing in front of all of you, and I'll tell you that it happened very gradually, but it happened through a process of getting outside of what I felt comfortable with and trying things that to be honest, terrified me. And so what I want to ask all of you, and I apologize, my clicker is for some reason not working, is what do you avoid because it scares you? I work with a lot of undergraduate teachers, so 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, and they are getting ready to teach lessons to children. They're elementary teachers, they're going to be early childhood teachers, and they are really excited to get up and work with students. But I ask them to do a presentation in front of the class, and they say, no, we can't do that. We're scared to do a presentation in front of the class. How many of you, you're all teachers, right, or supervisors or connected with education, how many of you are scared to get in front of your peers and colleagues and give a presentation? Okay, so a good number. What else do you avoid because it scares you? How many of you are scared of an animal? Some kind of animal, okay?
Any animal?
What about insects, spiders? Ooh, a lot, okay. I have one friend who, we were walking down the street one day and she thought she saw a spider. There was no spider. She screamed so loud it scared me, okay?
Scared the
what
hell
about
out of me.
heights? How many of you are scared of heights?
Heights?
Flying, oh yes, okay.
Heights.
I say that I'm not necessarily so scared of heights, but I'm scared of falling. So that makes me scared of heights. In the classroom, we're often scared of many things too. And a lot of times what we're scared of is things that are new, right? So there are lots of things that are new in the classroom, and things that we're asked to do, and challenges. So these could be new challenges, such as new strategies that we're asked to try. So our supervisor comes into the classroom and says, you need to try this, or you need to do this differently. Maybe it's the Ministry of Education that says you need to do this differently. You need to try a new method. All right, so we have challenges as teachers every single day in the classroom. I apologize for having to go back and forth here. Sometimes, though, we also find a challenge, or we are scared of asking for feedback, or learning a new skill, or listening to a different perspective. So, sometimes when we're in the classroom and a supervisor comes into our class, we might not want them in our class because we don't want to hear what they have to say because it might be negative. It might be something that we have to improve or do better. I think that one of the things that we have to think about is why do we avoid having people come into our classroom and give suggestions? Why do we avoid trying new strategies? Why do we avoid these new methods or resist them, push back on them? And I think that sometimes we say to ourselves that we resist the new methods because they won't work. We resist the new strategies because whoever's telling us to do those things doesn't understand our classroom. When a supervisor comes into our class and tells us to change, we resist or we avoid that feedback because we think they don't understand our students, don't understand our classroom. And what I want to pose to you, or to give you a different way of looking at this, is to think about whether you avoid those things not because of these other issues, but because you're afraid you might fail. So maybe the fear is not that somebody else doesn't understand. The fear is that if somebody tells you or comes into your classroom, they might see you not at your best. They might see a student not learning. They might see a strategy fail. They might see a test that doesn't turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out. You might not want to try a new strategy because you might try it and the students hate it. I do this all the time. I try a new strategy in my classroom and my students are like, Dr. Johnson, I do not like that. That made me uncomfortable. I don't want to do that again. And so it makes me think a little bit. But one of the things is, as teachers, failure is okay. Just like as a student, it's okay. So how do we get past this idea of failing being a bad thing? How many of you were good students? When you were in college, when you were in high school, how many of you were good students?
Best.
Quite a few. How many of you were not so great students? I love the two hands.
Yep, primary school. Yep.
Okay. So you're my favorites, okay? I love working with teachers who failed a lot as students. Because one of the things that they learned is that when they failed, they got better. And maybe they made mistakes early on, but they're doing really well right now. I was a perfectionist as a student. I was a very high achiever. I wanted all A's, all 100%. If I got a 97 on the test, I asked my teacher, where were my other 3 points? So when I entered the classroom the very first time, it was really a challenge. Because I entered the classroom my first year of teaching in Chicago with middle schoolers. Anybody in here teach teenagers? Okay, teenagers are really tough to teach. They have attitudes, right? So when I entered the classroom and started to teach teenagers, I failed every single day from September until February. Every day, something new would be a failure. That was really hard for me. And then sometimes my supervisor, my principal, would come in and watch me through this failure. That was terrifying because somebody was seeing me fail, which I wasn't used to. But once I got good at asking for feedback, once I got good at failing, I became a much better teacher. And my students did amazing that first year. In 1 year, I taught them enough that they were able to grow more than 2 years worth of knowledge. And it was because I failed so much, but I didn't give up. I kept trying. All right? So when we fail, it puts us in what I like to call our terror zone. This is where our heart starts beating really fast. We might start sweating. If you're like me, a few years ago, standing up in front of the class, you might cry, right? If you're an emotional person. You avoid it. It makes you anxious. You can't sleep at night. This is your terror zone. Many of us, we want to stay out of our terror zones, and it's a pretty good idea to stay out of your terror zone. So what you do instead is you go into your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is where you feel safe, where you know what to do, where you can predict what's going to happen next. As a teacher, this is when you do a lesson that you did, the same lesson you taught last year. You teach that same lesson again in the exact same way because you know what's going to happen. That's your comfort zone. But there's not just two options. In between this terror zone and this comfort zone is this place I like to call the growth zone. It's a place in between where the learning actually happens. So let me talk a little bit about each of these zones. So in your terror zone, again, this is where you feel extreme discomfort. You do not feel okay. You do not feel okay physically, you do not feel okay mentally. And you're also not learning very much because you're so stressed that you cannot focus on learning. This is your student in the classroom who is so scared of speaking in front of their peers that they can't say anything. So you know that they can produce those sentences, but when they stand up there, they go silent. That's your terror zone, right? If you do learn, there's a high cost to it. Maybe it makes you start hating the class because it causes you so much stress that you hate it. So there's a high cost. You might learn, but you're forced to do so, and now you don't want to learn anymore. This is a zone that I want you to try to avoid. When I talk to my teachers, most of my teachers come from an area that's not very diverse. They are mostly English speakers here in the U.S., and they have not met people from many different countries. And yet when they go into the classroom, they're going to be teaching students from all different backgrounds. We have a large refugee population in our area, so a lot of my teachers will be teaching a lot of students from all around the world. And so one of the things I ask them to do in my class is to go and meet people from all their different cultures. For some of them, that puts them in their terror zone. This idea of talking to somebody who is different from them is something they're not used to. It scares them. And so what I tell them is, you need to do something. You cannot stay in your comfort zone because you have to be ready to teach your students. But I don't want to put you in your terror zone because then you'll hate talking to people from other backgrounds. So where can we start? Where's the middle ground? And what I tell them is, go learn about another culture by reading an article. Maybe go with your friends. I suggest that they go with their friends to an event together, a support system. And then once they've done that, now maybe they'll be ready for the next step. So this is in steps. We have to first step outside of our comfort zone and do something that makes us a little bit uncomfortable. And then we can be more ready to enter this growth zone. Okay? But if we take too big of a step, then we just stop and we don't do anything. So this is the comfort zone is what we're trying to leave. So our comfort zone is that place where, again, we feel safe and secure, but the key here is that you're not learning anything. If you're teaching the same lesson that you taught last year, the same lesson that you taught 20 years ago,
that's right.
That's great. If the world is not changing around you, but you're not improving, you're not getting to where you should be as a teacher, where you could be. So you heard in the comments from my students that I pushed them very far. How many of you have heard of this concept of zone of proximal development? So you had like L plus 1 or I plus 1.
Yes.
Okay? So it's this idea that
The input, the
you
extra
always
input.
push a student a little bit farther but not too far. It's the same concept of high expectations. So I like to have high expectations of my students, and I have high expectations of all of you in this room. And I believe that you're really good at what you do right now, but you can be even better.
Oh yeah.
And I want to say that one more time because I think it's really important. I believe that every single person in this room, just by the fact that you are here today, I believe that you are an amazing teacher who wants to do better, because you wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. But wherever you are right now, I bet you can do better. I bet you can be better. I bet your students can be better. But in order to get better, you have to enter this growth zone. So you have to enter this place where you're a little bit uncomfortable. Because when you're uncomfortable, when you might fail, you're going to learn a little. You're going to be trying something new. This is where your goal is. So the idea of staying in your comfort zone is really alluring. It's a place we want to be in. It's a place we want to stay in. Again, it's comfortable. It's safe. It's secure. We don't have to think about it. And it's fine to stay within your comfort zone most of the time. We need to be there. But if we only stay in our comfort zone, what happens when the world around us changes? If the only thing we know is being in our comfort zone, what happens when the curriculum changes? What happens when our students change? What happens when our supervisor changes? What happens when the books change? If we've been inside our comfort zone for our entire careers, and we've never developed the skills that you develop when you go into your growth zone, then when the world around us changes, we suddenly enter our terror zones. And we stop. We say we can't do this. We resist. And it's because we're scared to fail. We don't know how to try something.
Yes.
So again, the comfort zone's okay if nothing in the world is going to change. Well, when does that ever happen? Right? So I want to give you an example, a non-teaching example of something that I've done recently that's gotten me outside of my comfort zone. So I was able to travel, to Hawaii recently, and I'm not complaining. It was the first time I was there. It was beautiful. But when I travel, I like to explore. And I heard about this mountain. It's Coco Crater. It's an old volcano crater. And there's this challenge of, can you get to the top of the crater in less than 30 minutes? And I thought to myself, I like a challenge. I like exercise. I'm going to try and do it. Well, the problem is that to go up this crater, it's railway ties. So it was an old railroad. And if you don't know much about railway ties, they're about 2 to 3 feet in between. Okay? And because it's old, the ground underneath has eroded away. So sometimes as you're walking, you step in between the ties and then you have to step up. And in between the ties, you have to step up. And so it's very challenging. There's over 1,000, so 1,040 or something like that, more than 1,000 railway ties to get up to the top. So it's very challenging. I thought, I can do this. I can do this. It was quite a challenge. I was very tired. My legs hurt. But I made it up in 27 minutes. Great. I was excited about that. Okay? Thank you for I felt very proud of myself, right? I was a little bit worried that I couldn't do it. I was stepping, I was a little bit uncomfortable. I was a little bit in my growth zone. But here's the problem with this. There's this section of this railway ties, and it's a little bit hard to see, but in between those ties there's a drop of about 40 feet. About 40 feet, okay? There's no railings, so you're just walking over these ties, afraid that you're going to fall in between or to the side. This was a little terrifying. This put me in my terror zone. Not going up, but going down. When I started to come down, it was starting to get dark, and I started to get scared because I was losing my balance and I didn't want to die. I kind of like living, okay? So I thought, I'm in my terror zone, I don't like being here, so I'm going to avoid it. And so I went off to the side, into the bushes, and I was going to take a shortcut around this section. Well, the shortcut, the bushes got very thick, and there was a steep cliff. So to get down, now I'm stuck. So to get down this cliff, I had to sit down and scoot on my bottom for about 30 to 40 feet. It took me much longer to go down that way than if I had just tried very carefully and very slowly to walk across each tie. But I was scared, so I tried to avoid it. It took me 27 minutes to get up the mountain. It took me 37 minutes to get down. I should be going faster down. It didn't work. So when we try and avoid things that are difficult, sometimes it ends up being harder. So instead of trying a new challenge or a new strategy in the classroom today, we avoid it, and all of our colleagues learn these new strategies, and then in a year, they're ready to teach their students and I'm not, and suddenly it's much harder. So here are some things that I've done as a teacher to enter my growth zone. One is just asking a colleague to come and observe a lesson. How many of you have had a colleague come and observe a lesson and give you feedback? That's awesome. That is amazing. A round of applause for those people. I think this is the scariest thing in the world to do for a teacher, is to have somebody come into your classroom and give you feedback on a lesson. One of the things that you're afraid of sometimes, that we are afraid of, and why we don't ask, is because, again, we're afraid that we might not do a good job. And if we don't do a good job, then that colleague might think we're a bad teacher. And we don't like that feeling of somebody else judging us, right? But one thing that I realized, and I know this as somebody who I go into other teachers' classrooms too, and I go into my undergraduates' classrooms, my new teachers, and I go in and I watch them. And almost every time I go in and I watch them, something goes wrong, right? That's teaching. A student acts up in class, a lesson doesn't go well. I don't think I've ever been in a classroom where the lesson went perfectly. Never. I've never been in a classroom where the lesson went perfectly, where everything went right. I've seen good lessons, but not perfect lessons. And so one thing that I realized as a teacher is that the supervisor coming in, and those of you, how many of you are supervisors in here? Okay, so this is important, supervisors. You need to share. Even your supervisors, they have bad lessons. It's a secret. I bet if you talk to those supervisors about their first year of teaching, they will be completely, you wouldn't even believe what happens. But I think sometimes even as supervisors, we're afraid of telling people that we made mistakes because it might make those teachers say, oh, they're not very good, they're not an expert. I'm standing up here, I was invited, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I was invited by the U.S. Embassy as an expert, English language teaching expert. I will be the first one to tell you that I teach lessons all the time that don't go well. And I've been teaching for a long time. Right? I have students, they give me feedback every semester, and I get mostly positive feedback, luckily. But sometimes students tell me things that I did poorly and that I need to improve. And it doesn't feel good, but it makes me a better teacher. And that's the thing that I can control. I cannot control what my students say about me. It scares me that there's Google, okay? Because one of these days a student's going to put out there something that's negative, right? I can't control that. I can't stop that. But I can control what I do with that information. I can say that information is going to help make me a better teacher. And I'm going to take that as a good suggestion to make me even better. That's what you can control. But it does help to know that your colleague coming into your classroom, that your supervisor coming into your classroom, just remember, even if they don't tell you, I bet they have a bad lesson somewhere. Find their supervisor and ask them. Okay? They'll tell you. Another really easy way to get into your growth zone is to go to a conference. You're here. You're in your growth zone right now learning new things. But one thing I will tell you, if this is comfortable for you, if you've been here a few years, you come here and you're best buddies, you see your best friends here, you're hugging, you're exchanging greetings. That's great. You're comfortable here. I'm excited. Please keep coming. All right, NileTESOL, thank you for inviting me. I want your participants to keep coming. But try and go someplace else and learn at a conference too, in addition to, not instead of, in addition to. Or go online and take a course, a new course. Do something to learn that's new that you haven't done before.
I did that. I took the
And then this one here about allowing more interaction and group work in the classroom. This is another thing that can be really scary to teachers. If you're used to standing in front of the classroom and everybody's silent listening to you. Because what teachers are often afraid of is classroom management, of losing control. So we like to have this teacher-directed, right? This teacher-directed way of teaching, where the teacher is at the front and all of the students are listening and the teacher is giving all of the information. To move to this learner-directed, where the students are talking to each other and the students are giving the teacher information, is really scary sometimes. Because it means that more people in the classroom are talking and I don't have full control. So this might put some of us in our growth zone. But try it. Letting students talk in class more than you are talking is a great way to enter your comfort zone, or your growth zone. Mm-hmm. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Close your mouth. Let your students talk and you listen. So what happens if you do this? What happens if you leave this conference and you take one new strategy and you implement it? whoops. This really amazing thing starts to happen. When you try a new strategy and it works, or maybe it doesn't work the first time, but it works on the second or third or fourth or fifth time. When it works, that new strategy now enters what?
Comfort zone?
Absolutely, yeah. So I heard it enters your comfort zone. So maybe before you only had 2 strategies in your comfort zone that you were really good at, and everything else was new. When you try a 3rd strategy and it works and you learn how to do it, it's in your comfort zone. When you try a 4th strategy and it works, it's in your comfort zone.
Yes.
And every strategy that you try and you learn how to do it enters your comfort zone, and then that comfort zone gets bigger.
Yeah.
Your growth zone also gets bigger because you lose your fear. When you enter that growth zone every day, every week, every year, you start to like being in your comfort zone. Right? So my family gets worried about me because sometimes I take more risks than I should. When I travel, I do like to try new things, and they make me promise to be safe every time. So I have to think, do I want to do this? What would my family think? I have to compare those two ideas. So I like to explore. And I went exploring the other night. I finally had the time and I was ready for today. So I went exploring and walking around the streets, and I got lost, of course. And my phone, internet stopped working, so I had no GPS. I didn't know where I was. Everybody was really nice and just looked at me, and it was fine. But it was in my growth zone. I was okay with that. I felt okay, even though I was lost. And I unfortunately don't speak very much Arabic at all. I couldn't communicate. I didn't know where I was. It was getting dark, but I was actually okay. Because I've done that before, right? I've been different places and I've gotten lost before, and I knew I had the confidence I could get home. I could figure it out. But I only had the confidence that I could figure it out because I've done it before. And I was okay with it. Here's what put me in my terror zone. Anybody have any idea what put me in my terror zone walking around Egypt? I had to do something. I had to cross something. I had to cross the street. That put me in my terror zone. Okay? So crossing the street